This is Algebra 1, Lesson 1-4, the distributive property. The objectives are to use the distributive property to evaluate expressions, use the distributive property to simplify expressions. Let's start with the vocabulary, like terms. Terms that contain the same variables with corresponding variables having the same exponent. Simplest form. An expression is in simplest form when it is replaced by an equivalent expression having no like terms or parentheses. Coefficient. The numerical factor of a term. You're going to hear me use coefficient a lot instead of calling it the number. Example 1. This is a real-life situation. Julio walks 5 days a week. He walks at a fast rate of 7 minutes and cools down for 2 minutes. Use the distributive property to write and evaluate an expression that determines the total number of minutes Julio walks. How do we find the total of something? We do that by adding. So we are going to add together how many minutes he spends walking. So he spends 7 fast and 2 for the cool down. But it wants to know the total number of minutes that he walks for the week. So if this is 1 week, or if this is 1 day, how many minutes does he walk for 1 week? All we are doing is writing an expression here. So 5 days each week. And to simplify this, you could either simplify what's in parentheses and then multiply, which is what we have been learning to do, or you can distribute. I would simplify in parentheses this time unless it's specifically said to show the distributive property. So that would be 5 times 9, which would be 45. 45 what does he walk in a week? But minutes. 45 minutes. Let's look at the distributive property. This was the one that we left blank on your paper. That was the number properties. When you see distributive property, you're going to see multiplication. Sometimes the multiplication happens to a sum. Other times it happens to a difference. But you've probably seen arrows drawn from the number or variable outside the parentheses being distributed to everything inside the parentheses. So if we distribute A to B, that's the same as writing A times B. And then put in your plus sign, distribute A to C, and that's the same as A times C. So distribution would look like this. If it is a difference, you're still going to distribute the same way. The only difference is there's a subtraction sign in the middle. So let's go ahead to example 2 and show distribution. It says to rewrite 12 times y plus 3. So you can show distribution in this manner. 12 gets distributed to y, and then it's distributed to 3. So what does that look like? It looks like 12 times y, and then put your plus sign in there, plus 12 times 3. Is this simplified? Not quite. 12y plus 36. Can 12y and 36 be added together? They cannot, because this 12 has a labeling of y This 36 does not have a y with it. That's like trying to put together apples. This y would signal that we're having apples here. And without a y, maybe this would be oranges. You can't combine apples and oranges. So like terms, if you remember the definition, they have to have the same corresponding variables. This one has a variable, this one does not. Now let's move on to example 3. Simplify by combining like terms. If you look at the labeling of 12, we have b squared. Of negative 8, we have b squared. And of 6, we have b. 2 of these are alike, 1 is not. We can combine the 2 that are the same, but not with the third one. If you look at the labeling of 12 and of negative 8, they both are a b squared. So all you do is combine the coefficients, which is the number in front of the variable. So combine 12 and negative 8, and you get 4. The b squared stays there because that's the type of term it was. Then what we have left is 6b. These two, even though they are a b, cannot be combined because by definition, it says they have to have the same exponents, and they do not. This is squared, and this is 1. Moving on to example 4. We are writing an algebraic expression for the verbal expression and then simplifying. So it says 6 times the sum of x and y increased 4 times the difference of 5x and y. Did you notice the phrase times the sum of and the other phrase times the difference of? That should automatically tell you we've got to use parentheses because we're not just taking 6 times a number, but times an expression. So 6 times, what are we doing inside of our parentheses? If it's a sum, you're adding them. And what are we adding? X and y. Increased by 4 times the difference of 5x and y. And difference means subtraction. So now we need to simplify this. You cannot add together x and y. You cannot subtract 5x minus y. So you cannot do what's inside parentheses because they cannot be combined. And when you think about order of operations, we would look for exponents next, and there are no exponents. Then we would look for multiplication. There's multiplication happening here because we did say times the sum of x and y. There's also multiplication happening here because we said times the difference of 5x and y. So multiplication would be done next in the form of distribution. If you want to draw your arrows, you can. It's kind of like sharing. 6 gets shared with x. It also gets shared with y. And since it's multiplication, our coefficient stays a 6, and we put the variable x with it. Bring down your addition sign. 6 gets shared with y, or distributed, and that's 6y. Bring down your addition sign. Now we are distributing or sharing the 4 with 5x. 4 times 5x would be 20x. And 4 distributed to y, let me put that negative sign in there, or that subtraction sign, would be 4y. Now we have 4 terms. we need to look and see if any of them have the same labeling that would make them like terms. For instance, this 6 has a labeling of x. Do we have any other terms with a labeling of x? Yes, we do. This 6y has a labeling of y and negative 4y. Those would go together. So you've got a choice right here. You can combine like terms the way it is, or if you would like to move your terms together that are alike, you can. 6x plus 20x shows that these two have a label of x. 6y minus 4y shows that these have a labeling of y. So let's add these together. 6 and 20 would be 26. And don't forget your labeling. 6 minus 4 is 2. And don't forget your labeling. These do not have the same labeling, so you cannot combine them by adding them. They have to stay separate terms. That is all for this lesson. You will now have an assignment that goes with it.